This problem is actually a continuation of the previous problem, so I'll bring the previous problem back up just as a reference before I do anything here, but let's go ahead and read it. It says, assume that the borrower above, in other words from the previous problem, has decided to pay an extra $150 per month to pay off the loan more quickly. Complete the first 3 lines of the new payment schedule and round everything to the nearest cents. In other words, we're referring back to the previous problem that we worked earlier, and I'll bring it back up here so you can see it. It's a 10-year mortgage of $92,000 at 5% interest, and we found out that the monthly payment was $976.12 for that $92,000 loan, and we did the amortization schedule for those 3 months, and we did it this way. That was the problem we worked earlier. We need part of that information to continue here. Let's look back now on what it says. It says, assume that the borrower above has decided to pay an extra $150 per month to pay off that loan more quickly. Well, so how much are they paying? I guess the first question. Remember from the previous one, we know the monthly payment was $976.12. So the monthly payment was $976.12. 12. But the borrower has decided to pay more than that. That's what the bank requires you to pay back, but you could pay back more. So this borrower is actually going to pay back more than required. And if you add those two figures, you end up with $1,026.12. In other words, the borrower wants to get this paid back more quickly. So the borrower has decided, no, I'm not going to pay back what the bank requires. I'm going to do better than that. I'm going to actually pay back $1,126.12 a month. So that goes all the way down. And now we redo the same thing we did before. Remember, it was a 5% interest rate, and it was on $92,000. For 10 years. The interest paid is based on the interest rate per month. Now, I don't want to redo this calculation because the interest rate didn't change, but we've already done the calculation. Remember, the annual interest rate, since these lines are all monthly, we've got to find the interest rate per month. So we take the 5%, divide by 12, and we get the .004166666, and finally you round off to 7 at the end whenever you write it down. So that's the number I'm going to use, and I'll just copy it back over here. So the monthly interest rate, R over M, came out to be .00416, however many sixes you want to write down. Eventually that 6 rounds to a 7. But remember, I'm one of those people who like to keep that number in the memory of the calculator so I don't have to keep typing it in, and also so that I think my accuracy is better. So if you don't remember from my doing it earlier, I'll do it again. If I take .05 and divide by 12, that's where I get that number from, and I can store it in memory with the MN. It's the shift of the MR, and of course the MR will bring it back. So I've got that interest rate here in my display now, but I've also got it in my memory. And then I go through the same process I've done on earlier problems. And basically that means that month by month, if I look at month 1, I take the amount you owed, which is $92,000, and multiply by this monthly interest rate, 1666667, and that's going to be the amount of interest paid that first month. Now again, I'm not going to rely on that rounding, however many I took. I'm going to use the number that I have in the display right now. So if I take that number in the display and times it by 92,000, then I get the interest paid. So the interest paid is $383.33. Now you might notice that's the same as the calculation earlier because I haven't made, the interest was calculated on the original amount borrowed, so it didn't change. Things won't start changing until following months. The amount paid on principal will change though because I paid more in the monthly payment. So now when I subtract the monthly payment from the interest paid to get the amount paid on principal, because I paid more, I will have paid more on principal. So what I need to do then is take, as before, this is nothing new. Once I get to this point, it's the same. 1126.12, 1126.10 minus 383.33, and that leaves me with $742.79. So the amount that goes to principal is $742.79. And of course, the new balance is just the old balance minus what you paid on principal. So that is $92,000 minus 742.79, and that leaves you with a balance after the first month of $91,257.21. And as before, it becomes repetitive at this point. In month 2, you make the same monthly payment, but it's on a smaller amount because you don't owe as much. So it's only on $91,257.21. The interest rate doesn't change. But again, I'm not relying on what I wrote down here anyway because I have that number stored in memory. So if I want to do that calculation, all I have to do is do MR. That brings this number back out of memory and then times it by $91,257.21. And that gives me $380, and it rounds up to the nearest cent, so that becomes 24 cents. So that's $380.24. And I never actually wrote that down from earlier. I just stuck it straight in here, but that's actually $383.33. I just went straight there. I should have written it down there. Okay, so now I've got $380.24, and the paid on principal is just the difference between those two numbers. So if I take 1126.12 and subtract 380.24, I get $745.88. Notice that the amount of interest paid is going down, the amount paid on principal is going up. That is as it should be. And now the new balance is the old balance minus the amount paid on principal. So I've got $91,257.21 minus the amount I paid on principal, which is $745.88, and that gives me a second month balance of $90,511.33. Repetitive, like I said. Month 3 is the amount of the previous month's balance, which is $90,511.33. The interest rate does not change. And as I said many times now, I have that interest rate stored in memory, so I just do MR to bring it out. Then I times it by $90,511.33 and hit equal, and that gives me $377.13. So $377.13. It looks in range. I always look for silly numbers that don't make any sense, and that might key you into the fact that you've made some careless mistake. And then, as usual, the interest paid taken away from the monthly payment is the amount paid on principal. So if I take the 11, 26, 12 and subtract off the 377.13 and hit equal, I get a paid on principal amount of $748.99. And to finish it off, the new balance after 3 months payments is the old balance minus the amount paid on principal. So that's $90,511.33 minus $748.99, which gives me a third month balance of $89,762.34. And there you go. And notice that since we're paying more after 3 months, instead of owing a little over $90,000, now you owe a little under $90,000. So by making a little extra than you have to, will reduce your balance.